Yo, what is going on YouTube? Welcome to my first episode of Book Reviews with Moises. For our first episode, we are going to be reviewing The Leading Brain, Neuroscience Hacks to Work Smarter, Better, and Happier. So to give you a brief summary on how I found this book, essentially, I was hanging out with my big brother, Adan. Shout out to Adan. We were walking around and we saw Barnes & Noble. We walked in and he had the camera on him and he said, Moises, let's take a picture. We were in the business section and I grabbed the first book that I saw and it was this book, and we took a picture of me with the book open. I'll see if I can show it to you guys. Essentially, I opened up the book, a random page. I had so much admiration for the knowledge that I was reading, and I felt like this is good stuff. Like, I really like this, and I ended up taking the book home that day. So what is this book about? This book provides a sense of psychological framework on a neuroscientific level. And essentially, it gives you a sort of framework that I like to call to not only acknowledge your emotions, but how to control them. And also provides a sense of how to sharpen your focus, how to work with people, how to manage people, how to be a leader. So what's in the book? Chapter 1, find your sweet spot. Chapter 2, regulate your emotions. Chapter 3, sharpen your focus. Chapter 4, manage habits. Chapter 5, unleash your unconsciousness. Chapter 6, foster learning. Chapter 7, thrive on diversity. Chapter 8, cultivate trust. Chapter 9, develop the team of the future. So to start off, the things I really like about this book, guys. So the number one thing that I really like that comes to mind is that if you don't like reading, this book has the best thing you could ask for. Because at the end of every single chapter is a nutshell. And essentially it provides a very quick summary of what is consisted of that specific chapter. After I read every chapter, I was able to review what I just learned. I really admire the kind of structure the book has. Like, you learn something and then you review it at the end of the chapter. So I highly recommend this to anybody that just doesn't like reading. Just read the chapter in a nutshell. After every chapter, there's a nutshell, and then the next chapter begins. And I also admire the fact that while I was reading this book, there wasn't necessarily a lot of fluff. I never really caught myself getting uninterested. I was always locked into this book, always learning something. There was never enough fluff in this book that would make me put the book down and be like, you know what, I'll read tomorrow. Fluff is essentially information that, has context in the book, but also doesn't have context. It's just like extra information that you don't really need. This book really always had me locked in. I love this book. I really do. Things that I didn't like about this book. I mean, honestly, alright guys, so in my opinion, the best chapters. Chapter 2 really emphasizes on the idea of what emotions are, what parts of the brain control our emotions, the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, fight or flight, threat and reward systems, all that kind of emotional processing. Chapter 2 is solely based on emotional processing and how we humans process emotions. So for the next chapter, Chapter 5, Chapter 5 is solely based on the unconsciousness and what our unconsciousness does for us. They talk a lot about creativity, intuition, what experts have to say, and really how our unconsciousness serves us on a daily basis. So for the next chapter, Chapter 6, foster learning. It really taught me the idea on how learning can be limitless. And I really do believe that learning can be absolutely limitless. And they really emphasize on the idea that as long as you're learning with an amount of novelty or emotional context, that anybody can learn absolutely anything. We learn the most through bad experiences, but we can also learn through good experiences. And that's why I bring back the novelty kind of aspect. If you're having fun while you're learning, that memory, that whatever you learned while you're having fun is going to stick with you for a very long time. So yeah, Chapter 6 really emphasizes on the idea that learning is limitless as long as you have a sense of novelty and or emotional context. with that. Who should read this book? I highly recommend that any manager, any boss, any leader, highly recommend that you read this book. Not only so that you know how to treat your team and or your employees, but how to treat yourself and how to show up to a specific setting where you don't want to implement your emotions, or you want to acknowledge one of your employees' emotions. So yeah, I highly recommend this to anybody who's a leader or wants to be able to manage what's going on in their head on an emotional level, to have more sense of control. Anybody who's managing a team, anybody who has a team, or anybody who's just a boss, at the end of this book, it's a lot about how to be that leader and how to treat your team. So who is this book not for? Who shouldn't be reading this? I think every human being should be able to acknowledge how their emotions work. Once you're able to acknowledge your emotions, they can't necessarily control you on a 100% level. I can't speak for everybody. Every human being is different. But I feel like once you're aware of what's going on in the mind, you have more sense of control and you get to pick and choose what you really want to do with whatever's going on with the mind. So, should you read this book? I highly believe that you should read this book. Not only if you feel like your emotions are out of control, you work with people that are always outlashing their unwanted emotions at you. If you work in a place full of people, all different kinds of people, I think you should read it. It's a good ass book. Like I love it. Like I really do like this book. Are you interested in reading this book? Let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see you next time on episode 2 with Book Reviews with Moises.